They say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. But what happens when indifference turns into disrespect? Liam thought he had a partner who believed in his dreams. But then came the video, a recording where his wife, Savannah, didn't just cheat on him. She mocked his entire existence to the man trying to destroy him. This is a story about a silent goodbye. No screaming, no fighting. Just a husband who realized his worth and quietly packed his bags while his wife was too busy laughing to notice. If stories about finding your dignity and the heavy price of betrayal speak to you, please hit subscribe and stay with me. How did Savannah react when she realized the pathetic husband she mocked was actually the genius she needed? Let's begin.
The notification on the iPad screen didn't mean to reveal anything sinister. It was just a synchronized cloud update, glowing softly in the dark living room. But when Liam tapped the video file thinking it was a saved memory, he didn't see a vacation clip. He saw his wife, Savannah, at a private gala, laughing with a man he didn't know, holding a glass of champagne. "Liam? Oh God, stop," she said in the video, her voice dripping with a cruelty he had never heard before. "He's still working on that pathetic green housing project. I told him to quit trying so hard. It's embarrassing compared to what we do, Chase." If stories about the quiet dignity of a broken heart and the deafening silence of a man who has finally had enough resonate with you, stay with me. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's about the moment respect dies and the terrifying clarity that comes after. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. Liam Moore sat at the mahogany dining table, the only island of light in the cavernous, darkened living room of the Meridian. Spread out before him were the blueprints for the Eco Haven initiative, affordable, sustainable, modular housing. It was the work of 3 years. His soul poured into graphite lines and vellum paper. To anyone else, it was just drawings. To Liam, it was the future. The digital clock on the oven read 1:14 a.m. The sound of the electronic lock disengaging beeped, slicing through the silence. Liam didn't look up, but his shoulders tensed. He heard the click of heels on the hardwood floor, uneven and heavy. Savannah. She brought the smell of ozone and expensive gin into the room. Once that scent had been intoxicating to him. Now it smelled like distance. She dropped her designer bag onto the sofa and walked over to the table, swaying slightly. "Still?" she asked, her voice raspy. She didn't sound impressed. She sounded exhausted, bordering on annoyed. "It's the final submission tomorrow, Sav," Liam said softly, finally looking up. His eyes were tired, framed by dark circles. "If this goes through, the grant money alone could what?" Savannah cut him off, picking up one of the sketches. She held it with the tips of her manicured fingers, as if it were something soiled. "Pay for a vacation we never take? Buy you a better car than that ancient Volvo? It's not about the money. It's about impact." Savannah let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of glass breaking. Impact. God, Liam, you sound like a college freshman. You're 34 years old. Do you know what Chase Rivers did today? He closed a Series B round for $40 million. $40 million. And he did it over lunch. Chase Rivers. The name had been haunting their conversations for months. Her new mentor at Pemberton Tech. "I'm not Chase," Liam said, his voice steady, though his chest tightened. "I'm building homes for families. Savannah, not apps for teenagers." Savannah dropped the sketch back onto the pile, It slid off the table and fluttered to the floor. Neither of them moved to pick it up. "That's the problem, Liam," she said, leaning down, her face close to his. Her breath smelled of alcohol and mint. "You think small. You think tedious. It's exhausting watching you run on this hamster wheel while everyone else is flying private." She straightened up, running a hand through her damp hair. "I told Chase about your little project tonight. You know what he said?" Liam felt a cold pit form in his stomach. "What did he say?" "He laughed," Savannah said, walking toward the bedroom, not looking back. "He said, 'Tell him to quit trying so hard. It's charming, but irrelevant.' And honestly, Liam, looking at you right now, I think he's right." The bedroom door clicked shut. Liam sat in the pool of yellow lamplight. The silence of the apartment rushed back in, deafening. He looked down at the fallen sketch on the floor, a design for a community garden in a low-income complex. Irrelevant. He didn't scream. He didn't throw the lamp against the wall. He simply bent down, picked up the drawing, and smoothed out the crease Savannah had left. His hands were perfectly steady. For the first time in 7 years, Liam didn't feel the urge to go into the bedroom and make peace. He felt something else entirely. He felt the cold, hard clarity of a man who realizes he is alone in his own marriage. He reached for his phone, opened his calendar, and deleted the entry marked "Anniversary Dinner for next week." It was a small action, but it was the first brick removed from the wall. The morning light in Seattle was a bruise of purple and gray, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the apartment. It was 6:00 a.m. Savannah was still asleep, the door to the master bedroom firmly shut, a physical barrier matching the emotional one she had erected the night before. Liam stood in the kitchen, the marble countertop cold beneath his forearms. He had brewed coffee, the dark liquid steaming in his mug, but he hadn't taken a sip. Beside his cup, the household iPad sat docked, its screen pulsing with a soft white notification. iCloud backup complete. 14 new items. He tapped the screen absently, intending to check the weather or perhaps a news feed, but the photo library opened instead. The sync had pulled images and videos from Savannah's phone while she slept. Most were blurry shots of wine glasses or selfies with colleagues, the standard curation of a high-status life. But the last item was a video, time-stamped 11:42 p.m. the previous night. Liam pressed play. The audio was muddy at first, a cacophony of jazz music and overlapping chatter, before Savannah's face came into focus. The camera angle was low and tilted, likely the phone propped up against a centerpiece or held carelessly in a lap. She wasn't looking at the lens. She was looking at a man sitting across from her, Chase Rivers. Even in the grainy footage, Chase radiated the predatory ease of a man who owned the room. He was leaning forward, swirling a tumbler of scotch. "So," Chase's voice cut through the noise, smooth and baritone. "How's the great architect? Still drawing his little boxes?" Liam felt the blood drain from his face. He leaned closer to the screen. Savannah laughed. It wasn't the warm, throaty laugh Liam used to coax out of her on Sunday mornings. It was high, performative, and sharp. "Oh God, don't ask," she said, rolling her eyes. "He's obsessed with this sustainable community idea. I told him nobody with real money cares about saving the planet if it doesn't come with a concierge service." Cruel. Chase smirked, though his eyes were cold, calculating. "But you're not wrong. He lacks your vision, Savannah." "He lacks the killer instinct," Savannah sighed, taking a sip of her drink. "He's soft, Chase. He thinks effort equals value. It's exhausting being the only adult in the room who understands how the world actually works. Maybe he needs to be cut loose, Chase suggested, his voice dropping lower. So you can fly. The video ended abruptly, cutting back to the silent library grid. Liam stared at the black screen of the iPad. The silence in the kitchen was no longer empty. It was heavy, suffocating. His hands were trembling, not from sadness, but from a shock so profound it felt like hypothermia. She hadn't just vented. She had dissected his character to entertain another man. She had invited an outsider, a shark like Chase Rivers, to feast on his dignity. Liam deleted the video from the iPad, but not before forwarding a copy to his secure personal email. The save button felt like a trigger pull. 2 hours later, Liam sat in the small, cluttered office of Wright Architecture in Pioneer Square. The brick walls were covered in sketches, a stark contrast to the sterile glass of Savannah's world. Mark Stevens, his partner and oldest friend, was pacing the room, holding a roll of prints. "The structural integrity on the modular units is solid, Liam," Mark said, his energy infectious. "I ran the numbers 3 times. If we can get the patent approved before the expo next month, we have a shot at the city contract. This is it. This is the breakthrough." Mark stopped and looked at Liam. "Hey, you okay? You look like you haven't slept in a week." Liam looked at Mark. Loyal, hard-working Mark, who drove a 10-year-old Honda and believed in what they were building. He thought about Savannah's words. "He's soft. He lacks the instinct." "I'm fine," Liam lied, his voice steady, devoid of emotion. "Just a long night. The numbers look good, Mark, but we need to lock down the IP today." "Already on it," Mark nodded, though he lingered, sensing the shift in the air. "Everything good at home?" Liam looked down at his drafting table. He picked up a pencil, testing the point against his thumb until it drew a drop of blood. "Home is just a place to sleep, Mark," Liam said quietly. "Let's get back to work." He didn't tell Mark about the video. He didn't tell him that the woman he loved had called their life's work a joke. Instead, Liam took that pain and folded it inward, compressing it into a dense, heavy resolve. He wasn't going to fight Savannah for respect. He was simply going to ensure that when he left, he took everything that mattered with him.
Hold on, let me pause here for a moment. This scene is absolutely gut-wrenching. You know, finding out your partner is cheating is painful enough, but hearing them mock your hard work? That hits a different level of cruelty. It shows she doesn't just lack love, she lacks respect. Liam going cold instead of angry is actually terrifying here. It means something inside him just broke. Real talk. What would hurt you more? The physical cheating, or hearing them laugh at your dreams?
The dining room of the Meridian was staged like a theater set. Crystal stemware caught the dim light of the chandelier, and the scent of roasted duck and truffles hung heavy in the air. It was a celebration dinner for the completion of the Pemberton Rivers deal, and Savannah was the director, glowing in a silk dress that cost more than Liam's first car. Liam sat at the head of the table, though he felt like a prop, a piece of furniture necessary for the composition but irrelevant to the function. Around him sat 6 of Seattle's tech elite, including Chase Rivers, who sat to Savannah's right, occupying the space that emotionally, if not physically, belonged to the husband. For the first hour, Liam played his part perfectly. He poured wine, smiled at the right pauses, and nodded as the conversation revolved around IPOs, acquisition costs, and market domination. He was a ghost in his own home, haunting the periphery of his wife's ambition. The key isn't just ownership, Chase was saying, gesturing with a fork as if conducting an orchestra. It's about creating a dependency loop. You don't just sell them a house. You sell them the ecosystem. That's where the real margin is. The table murmured in agreement. Savannah leaned in, her eyes fixed on Chase with an intensity that made Liam's stomach turn. It wasn't sexual desire, or at least not only that. It was a hunger for power. She looked at Chase like he was the mirror she wanted to see herself in. "That's exactly it," Savannah said, her voice bright. "Efficiency is the new currency. If it doesn't scale, it doesn't matter." "Actually," Liam spoke up. The table went quiet. It was the first time he had volunteered an opinion all night. Scale isn't the only metric. In housing, stability is the currency. If you build an ecosystem that drains the residents' income, you create a turnover cycle. My research shows that sustainable, low-cost modulars actually increase long-term property value because the community stays rooted. For a second, there was silence. Liam felt a flicker of pride. He was speaking his truth, the foundation of the work he and Mark had bled for. Then, Savannah laughed. It was a soft, indulgent sound, the kind a mother makes when a child says something precocious but foolish. She placed her hand over Liam's on the table, a gesture that looked affectionate but felt like a restraint. "Oh, Liam," she said, flashing a dazzling, apologetic smile to the guests. "Honey, you're talking about charity. Chase is talking about business. We all know your modular project is sweet. Ideally. But let's be real. It's not a business model. It's a philanthropy case study." She squeezed his hand, her nails digging slightly into his skin. "Let's leave the real economics to the people who manage capital, shall we?" The humiliation was surgical. She hadn't just disagreed with him. She had invalidated his professional existence in front of the very man who had mocked him on video. She had reduced his life's work to a sweet hobby to score points with a venture capitalist. Chase smirked, raising his glass toward Savannah. "To scalability," he toasted, dismissing Liam entirely. "To scalability," the table chorused. Liam didn't raise his glass. He looked at Savannah, really looked at her. He saw the sharp lines of her ambition, the hollowness behind her eyes, and the absolute lack of loyalty in her heart. He realized then that the woman he had married, the one who used to dream of building a life together, was gone. She had been replaced by this stranger who would sell him out for a seat at the cool kids' table. The anger he expected didn't come. Instead, a profound, icy calm settled over him. It was the calm of a man who realizes the building is burning down and stops trying to save the furniture. He gently pulled his hand out from under hers. "Excuse me," Liam said quietly. "I need to check on the wine." He stood up and walked into the kitchen. He didn't check the wine. He stood by the granite island, listening to the laughter erupting from the other room. Savannah's laugh loudest of all. He took a deep breath, inhaling the silence of the kitchen, and made the decision. He wasn't going to argue. He wasn't going to cause a scene. He was simply going to vanish. Leaving a marriage is rarely an event. It is a process, a slow dismantling of a shared architecture. For Liam, it became a silent second job. Over the next 20 days, the luxury apartment at the Meridian began to lose its density, though only a careful observer would have noticed. Liam didn't pack boxes in the living room. He didn't stack luggage by the door. Instead, he practiced the art of erasure. Every morning, he left for work carrying his usual leather satchel, but it was heavier than before. Inside, buried beneath blueprints and tablet cases, were the artifacts of his existence. A framed photo of his mother, his vintage watch collection, the first edition architecture books he had collected since college. He drove these items not to the firm, but to a converted loft space in Georgetown, a gritty industrial district miles away from the polished veneer of their current neighborhood. The space was raw, smelling of sawdust and rain, but it was his. He had signed the lease 2 days after the dinner party using a new, separate bank account. Savannah noticed nothing. She was in the throes of what she called the deal of the century. Chase Rivers had integrated her into his inner circle, and she was high on the validation. She came home late, vibrating with adrenaline, often smelling of expensive cigar smoke and scotch. One Tuesday evening, Liam was in the walk-in closet, removing his winter coats. He spaced Savannah's clothes out to fill the gaps, maintaining the illusion of fullness. Savannah walked in, phone pressed to her ear. "No, Chase. I told him the valuation was too low," she said, pacing past Liam as if he were a mannequin. She kicked off her heels, nearly tripping over a duffel bag Liam had just zipped shut. "Exactly. We squeeze them until they bleed, then we buy the IP for pennies." She paused, listening, then laughed, that same sharp, performative laugh. "You're terrible, I love it." She finally lowered the phone and looked at Liam. He froze, his hand on the handle of the bag. If she asked what was in it, he would have to lie. If she looked at the rack behind him, she would see that half his wardrobe was gone. "God, I'm exhausted," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "Chase is demanding, but he's brilliant, Liam. You could learn a lot from his aggression." She turned around and walked into the bathroom, starting the shower. She hadn't seen the bag. She hadn't seen the gaps. She hadn't seen him. Liam exhaled, a breath he felt he'd been holding for 10 minutes. He picked up the bag and walked out of the bedroom. The financial separation was colder, more binary. Liam visited their wealth management firm during his lunch break. He didn't ask for more than his share. He simply divided the liquid assets down the middle, transferring his portion to a secure trust. He removed his name from the joint credit cards. He changed the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy from Savannah Moore to his niece. It was a bureaucratic death. By Friday of the third week, the apartment was no longer his home. It was a stage set where he slept. At the office, Mark Stevens watched him with growing concern. "You're living here, aren't you?" Mark asked one evening, finding Liam brushing his teeth in the break room sink. "Not here," Liam corrected, wiping his mouth. "I got a place in Georgetown." Mark stared at him. "Does she know?" "No." "Liam, you have to tell her eventually. The silence. It's going to kill her when she finds out." "She's been killing us for years, Mark," Liam said, his voice void of malice. "She just used noise to do it. I'm using silence." He returned to his desk, where the final prototype for the Eco Haven project sat. It was beautiful, simple, resilient, and honest. Everything his marriage wasn't. "The patent review is Monday," Liam said, changing the subject. "If we get the stamp, we launch." "And if we launch?" Mark asked. "Then I leave," Liam said. "Monday is the day." He drove back to the Meridian one last time that weekend. He sat on the edge of the bed while Savannah slept, her breathing rhythmic and heavy. In the moonlight, she looked like the woman he had married 7 years ago. He waited for a pang of regret. Oh, tear, anything. But he felt nothing. The grief had been processed in the thousands of small moments of disrespect over the years. Now there was only the logistics of the exit. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the Seattle skyline. Somewhere out there, Chase Rivers was sleeping, thinking he had won. Liam touched the cold glass. The game hadn't even started. Monday morning didn't break with a storm. It broke with a blinding, absolute clarity. At 9:15 a.m., inside the brick-walled studio of Wright Architecture, the phone rang. It was the City Housing Authority, followed immediately by a call from the Patent Office. Mark Stevens took the first call. Liam took the second. When they hung up, the silence in the room was heavy, electric. Mark looked at Liam, his eyes wide, disbelief warring with triumph. "They approved the pilot," Mark whispered, as if saying it too loud would shatter the reality. "And the patent? The patent is locked, Liam. It's yours. It's ours. The Sustainable Housing Grant is signing the check this afternoon. $5 million to start." Liam sat back in his chair. The validation washed over him, not as a rush of adrenaline, but as a deep, settling weight. For 3 years, Savannah had called this a hobby. For months, Chase Rivers had called it irrelevant. And yet, in one phone call, Liam had achieved something neither of them ever would. He had built something real, something that would outlast a stock cycle. He didn't pop champagne. He didn't cheer. He simply nodded, picked up his phone, and saw a text from Savannah. "Board dinner tonight at 7. Chase is bringing the partners. Don't wear that gray suit, it looks cheap. And please, try not to bore them with the eco-talk." Liam read the message. He didn't reply. He didn't feel anger anymore. He felt the detachment of an astronaut looking down at a distant, turbulent planet. "I have to go," Liam said to Mark, standing up. "I have one last errand." "The launch party is at 6, Marka said. "You'll be back?" "I'll be there," Liam said, as a free man. He drove to the Meridian at 11 a.m. The building was quiet, the midday sun reflecting off the glass towers of downtown Seattle. He took the elevator up to the penthouse, his heart beating with a slow, steady rhythm. The apartment smelled of cleaning products and stale coffee. It was pristine, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth. Liam walked to the master bedroom. His side of the closet was already bare, a fact Savannah hadn't noticed in 3 days because she had been too busy looking at herself in the mirror. He took the final item, a small box containing his grandfather's cufflinks tucked in the back of a drawer. He walked back out to the kitchen, the massive Marble Island kitchen where they had once cooked dinner together, where they had argued, where he had decided to leave. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, signed, notarized, and sedated. He placed the envelope on the center of the island, right next to the chrome espresso machine, the first thing Savannah touched every morning. Then, he reached for his left hand. The gold band felt tight, as if it had fused to his skin over 7 years. He twisted it, pulling it over the knuckle. It came off with a small resistance, leaving a pale band of untanned skin on his finger. He placed the ring on top of the envelope. Then he took his house key, the heavy electronic fob that granted access to the building, the elevator, the life he had built and was now abandoning. He placed it next to the ring, the envelope, the ring, the key, a triptych of a finished life. He didn't write a note. There was nothing left to say that the papers didn't cover. Explanations were for people who still hoped to be understood. Liam no longer cared if Savannah understood him. He turned around and walked to the door. He paused for a fraction of a second, his hand on the handle listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic below. He waited for the wave of nostalgia, but it didn't come. The only thing he felt was the lightness of his hand, unburdened by the gold band. He opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and let it click shut behind him. He didn't look back. He took the elevator down to the garage, got into his car, and drove out of the darkness of the parking structure into the blinding white light of the noon sun.
Can we just talk about what just happened? The ring, the key, and the papers next to the coffee machine. That image is louder than any screaming match. It's poetic justice. On the day he achieves his biggest success, he decides she doesn't deserve to celebrate with him. He didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. If you were Liam, would you have left a letter explaining everything, or done exactly what he did?
Savannah Moore stepped out of the elevator and into the penthouse at 10:45 p.m. She was buzzing with a frantic, artificial energy. The board dinner had been a success. At least, that's what she kept telling herself, drowning out the memory of Chase's subtle distraction and the way the partners had asked about Liam's absence with raised eyebrows. "Liam?" she called out, kicking off her heels near the entryway. "You missed a hell of a night. Chase was asking where you were, though I think he was relieved not to hear about the eco-projects." She waited for his retort, for the soft sound of his voice defending his work from the study. Silence. Not the comfortable silence of two people reading in separate rooms. This was a dead silence. The air felt stagnant, as if no one had breathed it for hours. "Liam?" She walked into the living room. The lights were off. She moved to the kitchen, intending to pour a glass of water to wash down the lingering taste of red wine and anxiety. The under-cabinet lighting cast a clinical glow on the granite island. That was when she saw it. It looked like an art installation in its precision. The thick manila envelope, the silver key fob, and gleaming under the LED lights, the gold wedding band she had placed on his finger 7 years ago. Savannah froze. Her purse slipped from her shoulder, hitting the floor with a heavy thud, but she didn't flinch. She walked toward the island slowly, as if the objects were rigged with explosives. She reached out and touched the ring. It was cold. "What is this?" she whispered to the empty room. "Is this some kind of dramatic statement?" She ripped open the envelope. She expected a letter, a long, emotional diatribe about how she didn't appreciate him, something she could roll her eyes at and apologize for later. Instead, she pulled out a legal document, petition for dissolution of marriage. She scanned the pages, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't a draft. It was signed, notarized, dated 3 days ago. "No," she said, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "No, this is ridiculous." She dropped the papers and ran to the bedroom. She threw open the double doors of the walk-in closet. "Liam, come out, this isn't funny." She stared into the abyss. The right side of the closet, his side, was stripped bare. No suits, no shirts, no shoes, even the wooden hangers were gone. It wasn't just that he had left. He had erased himself. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through her denial. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling so hard she unlocked it on the 3rd try. She dialed his number. Beep, beep, beep. "The number you are trying to reach is not accepting calls at this time." Blocked. She tried Mark Stevens, straight to voicemail. She tried the landline at his office. Disconnected. Savannah stood in the center of the bedroom, clutching her phone. The apartment, usually a symbol of their combined success, now felt like a mausoleum. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror, the designer dress, the perfect hair, and suddenly felt small. "Fine," she snapped, her voice cracking. "Fine. If you want to leave, leave. I don't need you." She needed to win. She needed to be validated. She couldn't stay in this silence. It was too loud. She needed someone who understood real success. She pulled up Chase Rivers' contact. She didn't call. She needed to see him. She needed him to tell her that Liam was a fool, that she was better off, that they were the power couple now. She grabbed her keys, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them twice, and ran out of the apartment, leaving the divorce papers scattered across the kitchen floor like fallen leaves. She drove too fast through the rainy streets of Seattle, heading toward Chase's building in Belltown. She told herself she was running toward her future. She didn't realize she was running toward the cliff edge. The elevator to Chase Rivers' penthouse opened directly into his living room, a glass box floating 40 stories above the city. It was impressive, sterile, and cold. Savannah stormed in, her mascara smudged, her chest heaving. "He left me," she blurted out, the words echoing off the hard surfaces. "Liam, he cleared out the apartment. He filed for divorce." She waited for Chase to stand up from his leather armchair, to cross the room and embrace her, to tell her that Liam was a fool and that this was the beginning of their empire together. Chase didn't stand. He didn't even put down his tablet. He simply swiped a finger across the screen, his expression one of mild irritation, like a man whose dinner reservation had been canceled. "Did he?" Chase asked, his tone flat. "That's inconvenient." Savannah stopped in the middle of the room, confused. "Inconvenient?" "Chase, my marriage is over. I walked out on him. Well, he walked out on me, because I chose this. I chose us. The vision." Chase finally looked up. His eyes were devoid of the seductive warmth she was used to. They were calculating, stripped of the pretense required for courtship. "There is no us, Savannah," he said, standing up and walking to the wet bar. He poured himself a water, not offering her one. "And frankly, if he filed today, that means the asset separation is already in motion, which means you didn't get him to sign the IP transfer for the housing project." Savannah blinked, her head spinning. "The housing project? That stupid modular thing? Who cares about that? We have the merger." Chase turned, leaning against the counter, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "You really didn't see it, did you?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "You lived with the man for 7 years, and you didn't see what he was building." "It was a hobby," she stammered, defensive. "He was playing with blocks." "It was a disruptor," Chase corrected, his voice sharp. "Liam's modular system cuts construction costs by 40% while maintaining LEED Platinum certification. Do you know what that does to my portfolio of traditional high-rise developments? It undercuts them. It makes them obsolete." The blood drained from Savannah's face. The room seemed to tilt. "I didn't flirt with you because I was captivated by your strategic mind, Savannah," Chase continued, delivering the words with surgical precision. "I did it because I needed to get inside his head. I needed to demoralize him. I needed his wife to tell him he was a failure, so he would doubt himself enough to sell the patent to me for pennies." He took a sip of water, watching her crumble. "But instead of breaking him," Chase shrugged, "you just annoyed him enough to make him focus. And now, my sources tell me the city just approved his pilot. So really, you failed." Savannah felt a physical blow to her chest. She gasped for air, the realization crashing down on her like a tidal wave. All the mockery, all the times she had rolled her eyes at Liam's sketches, all the nights she had spent seeking Chase's approval. She hadn't been climbing the ladder. She had been digging her own grave, handing the shovel to the man who wanted to bury her husband's legacy. "You used me," she whispered, her voice trembling with horror. I leveraged an asset, Chase corrected coldly. That's business. Isn't that what you always told Liam? Efficiency is the currency. He set the glass down and checked his watch. I have an early flight to Tokyo. You should go, Savannah. You have a divorce to manage. And honestly, you're not very useful to me without him. He turned his back on her. Savannah stood there for a long moment, the humiliation burning her skin. She looked at the man she thought was her equal and realized he was just a thief in a tailored suit. And then she thought of Liam. Quiet, steady, brilliant Liam, working late into the night on something that could change the world, while she sat in the other room laughing at him. She turned and walked to the elevator, her legs numb. As the doors closed, shutting out Chase's view of the city, she saw her own reflection in the polished metal. She didn't see a powerful executive. She saw a woman holding a handful of ashes, realizing she had burned down the only real thing she ever had. The rain in Seattle had finally broken, giving way to a crisp, blinding spring afternoon. Liam stood inside the shell of the new community center in the Central District. It was the flagship build of the Eco Haven pilot. Exposed timber, floor-to-ceiling glass, and a living green wall that breathed life into the space. It was tangible, real, and undeniably successful. He was rolling up a set of prints when he heard the door open. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The cadence of the footsteps was hesitant now, lacking the aggressive click-clack that used to echo through the penthouse, but he recognized the rhythm. It's beautiful, Liam, Savannah said. He turned. She was standing in the entrance, framed by the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. She looked different. The sharp, corporate armor was gone. Her hair was looser, her makeup minimal. She looked tired. She looked like the woman he had met in college, before the ambition had calcified her heart. Savannah, he acknowledged, his voice neutral. He didn't invite her in. She walked closer, stepping over a stray extension cord. I saw the article in the Times. The architect who healed a neighborhood. They're calling you a visionary. They called me a dreamer 3 months ago, Liam said, placing the prints on a sawhorse table. Labels change. I was wrong, she said, the words rushing out as if she had practiced them 1,000 times. About the work, about Chase, about us. She stopped a few feet away from him, her eyes searching his face for a crack in the armor, a sign of the husband who used to forgive her everything. Chase was a fraud, she continued, her voice trembling. He didn't care about me. He just wanted to hurt you. I was blinded, Liam. But I'm awake now. We can fix this. We were a team once. We can be a power couple for real this time. You build, I strategize. Just like we planned. Liam looked at her, and for a moment he felt a wave of sadness, not for the end of the marriage, but for the fact that she still didn't understand. She was still talking about power couples and strategy. She was still trying to negotiate a merger, not save a relationship. You don't get it, Liam said softly. I do, she pleaded, reaching out to touch his arm. He stepped back, a small but deliberate movement that put miles between them. I know I hurt you. I mocked you. But that was the stress talking. That wasn't me. It was you, Liam corrected. That was the truest version of you, Savannah. The one who looked at my passion and saw weakness. The one who needed a man like Chase Rivers to feel valuable. He looked around the building, the structure he had built with his own mind and hands, despite her. I didn't leave because you flirted with another man, Liam said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of finality. I left because I realized I was lonely in the same room as you. I was starving for respect, and you were feeding me contempt. Tears spilled over her lashes, tracking through the powder on her cheeks. But I love you. Doesn't that matter? Liam looked at her with a calm, devastating pity. You fell in love with the reflection, Savannah, he said. You loved that I made you look stable. You loved the idea of us. But I was the light source. And now, the light is gone. He picked up his helmet and his bag. He walked past her, toward the open door where the city awaited. Liam, please, she cried out, her voice cracking. He didn't stop. He walked out of the building, leaving her standing in the empty, sun-drenched hall of his creation. 30 minutes later, Liam unlocked the door to his new apartment in Georgetown. It wasn't a penthouse. It was a converted loft, raw brick and wide plank floors, smelling of cedar and fresh paint. It was quiet, but it was a peaceful silence, not a lonely one. He dropped his bag on the floor. He walked to the large industrial window that overlooked the sound. He cranked the handle, pushing the glass pane outward. The cool breeze rushed in, carrying the scent of salt water and pine. The sun hit his face, warm and direct. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with air that felt cleaner than it had in years. He was 34 years old. He was alone. And for the first time in his life, he was completely whole.
What a bittersweet ending. Savannah is left with the luxury she wanted, but without the warmth she needed. It's a tragic reminder that disrespect is the fastest way to kill a marriage. Liam proved that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply disappear and start over. If you were in Liam's shoes, would you have given her a second chance after she realized her mistake? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please leave a like and share it. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of your heart.